Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Best Damn Sports Show in Franklin County for Wednesday, August 5th, 2020. I'm the Nighthawk, along with our engineer, Mr. Allen, and on my far right.
Imagine that.
Definitely doing the social distancing here, Mr. Duke Forrest, and a plethora of things to talk about. But before we get rolling, I don't know what it is with me. I always like to talk weather first.
I think people love weather.
That storm, I love them. It was more like a steady, moderate downpour for numerous hours.
Yeah.
And my lawn has grown more in 24 hours than it has all summer.
Okay.
So how many inches did we get locally?
Of course, I can't answer the question because I don't have a rain gauge. But I can tell you Burlington, first, Amanda Tebow, who's pretty solid, Fox 44, Channel 22, chief meteorologist. She had Burlington with, and I'm watching last night, 11 o'clock news, when the rain was pretty much over. She had Burlington at 2.3, but then I flipped over to Channel 3, and Mr. Dan Dowling had Burlington with 2.5, and that might have been a little later. So I suspect about 2.5.
Okay.
And I was weather channeling pretty much all day, monitoring weather. Just by the sense of it, by the look of it, I would say here 1 to 2 inches. I'm not sure we got up to 2.5, but probably I'd say around 2.
Yeah.
I should get a rain gauge.
And what about?
But the river was noticeable. Driving to Enosburg today to the 1906 house, the Missisquoi, it's been painful to look at it. It's been so low. When you get past Harbin's here, you have the big curve to the right there. When you get a good look at the river, there's just a little island in the river there.
Yep.
And that's a noteworthy landmark. And that was just way out of the water. The river just at the bottom of that island. That island was almost covered today. Just some of the grass coming off the top of it.
Okay.
So the river was way up, and Ian and I went down to Enosburg Falls to the falls. And checked it out, and it was pretty impressive and incredibly brown, with obviously all the dirt silt coming into it. Yeah. But it just reminded me of pictures of the Mississippi, just totally brown river. But anyway, I'll be interested, and I'll monitor the lake level down to about 94.5 feet.
I can tell you.
I'm guessing might come up a foot or so.
I can tell you exactly what it is as of 5 o'clock this afternoon.
And is that today?
Today. Yeah, okay. I checked. It's
let me guess. 94.9.
You're
higher?
Close. 94.71.
Okay, so up a little bit.
And the lake temperature was 74.7.
Okay, so where are you getting that data from?
Some official-looking website.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That was as of 5. And the lake level, the lowest it's ever been, and I'm not sure what website.
Either 92 or 93?
You're pretty good. It was 92 feet. It's not at 92 point anything. Just it said 92 feet back in 1908. So
okay, because
I can't even imagine what the lake would look like at 92 feet.
It's unreal. And, of course, the high point was not that long ago.
What year?
The flooding of 2011.
It was 2011.
Which was actually Irene. That Vermont got nailed by Irene later in the year. But 1911, and that's 103.27, something close, but 103 plus, and that's the highest since they've been recording data.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing. That's an 11-foot difference between the records. Oh, one other thing. Yesterday, while I think of it, courtesy of Amanda Tebow, she threw up a wind gust at Mount Washington. You want to guess their highest gust
Mount
yesterday?
Washington, and
which is famous for
New Hampshire,
incredible winds.
I will say 87.
Oh, way low. How about she first threw up 146 and then corrected herself to 147 mile an hour gust.
Wow.
And also noted the highest August gust apparently since Mount Washington's been keeping records. And of course, Mount Washington for years had the highest, I'm trying to think if it's gusts or sustained wind. Anyway, had the highest whatever in the world for years of about 231 miles an hour years ago, and somebody, I think maybe sustained, maybe in a hurricane you get, the strongest hurricanes are like 150 or so, but somebody finally topped Mount Washington, whose reputation is some of the world's, worst weather. But I mean, the winds especially are noteworthy.
Now,
on
is Mount Washington higher than any of the mountains in Vermont?
It's the highest mountain in the
New
Northeast.
England?
The only mountain higher in the eastern U.S., east of the Mississippi, Mount Mitchell, North Carolina.
Okay.
And I should have. I'm a good stat guy. Mount Washington, maybe 6,600 or so. Mount Mitchell's, which I've been around, I've never been up Mount Mitchell, is about 6,800.
Okay.
Both under 7,000, but Mount Washington is the highest mountain in the Northeast.
Have you been on the top of Mount
Yeah,
Washington?
long point. I'm sad to say I've never hiked it with my folks. I do remember long ago, vaguely remember we went up, we drove up at one time, never hiked up it.
Yeah. So
Anyway.
right. We certainly didn't get the wind levels what they were predicting.
Although Vermont, for the record, I mean, the Weather Service did a pretty good, it was an interesting storm because it stayed together. Usually it ended up being a kind of a minor hurricane when it made landfall near Wilmington, North Carolina. I love Jim. Did you watch the Weather Channel at all? Jim Cantori, of course, he's a Vermont native.
Okay, I did flip over, and it drives me nuts when they stand up.
Right. Oh, he was getting blown. Right. It was painful.
And you know what usually happens when these weather guys are being dramatic about the wind? You get two dopey 8th grade boys with no shirts on bicycling past them.
Believe me, that wouldn't have been the case.
But
Jim Cantori
that happens a lot, though.
It may happen a lot. And this is totally legit. You wouldn't have seen two kids biking past him.
Yeah.
He was at Wrightsville Beach. That's the ocean beach right outside of Wilmington, where I've logged some good time. But it's a little painful. Yeah, he could barely talk.
Yeah.
I go, come on, guys. But anyway, why was I getting to? Anyway, but the storm hung together. Usually when the hurricane, in this case, minor hurricane, makes landfall, tropical storm, but it'll usually kind of fall apart pretty quickly. This guy, in fact, it came right through here. It might well have come over St. Albans. The official 8 p.m. Reading for boy, I got to think of that, Isaias, weird name, Spanish for Isaiah, I guess. But at 8 o'clock last night, it was right near Albany, and the next official reading 3 hours later, it was literally just across the border here, 40 miles southeast of Montreal.
Okay.
And at that point, it was like subtropical, but it basically might well have come right over Burlington and St. Albans pretty much, but it hung together as a tropical storm right to the border with like 60-mile-an-hour winds, but I think the storm track, a lot of the higher winds are a little to the east of it. So yeah, I was just at my house, and it was windy, but I'm trying to think. Burlington's highest gust might have been 40-something, not crazy.
So, Duke, I did golf with you on Saturday and Sunday, but I did tell you about the dream I had about you.
Oh, God, about the dream?
Okay, so
Hopefully not a dream that I'll never, ever play golf again.
Okay, no. So this was like Friday morning. Most people have nightmares. I have morning mares. And I'm telling you, this is so realistic.
I've been dreaming a lot lately myself.
And I will tell you,
Fortunately, not
when
about
I
my
woke
golf.
up, my hands were like, I stuck them in a bucket of water.
Really?
It was so sweaty. So
This
here,
is Friday, so when you wake up, or in your case,
well, this
late
is the
Friday
dream
morning.
of me and you, and you can tell it was a dream. So here it is. You and I are mountain climbing.
Really?
Okay, so you can tell that's the dream already. Do you envision me as a mountain climber? So we're mountain climbing, and we're sitting on a little pitched roof, which is a hut kind of built in the mountain.
Yeah.
Now,
Do we know what mountain this is?
we don't.
No idea where on earth.
No idea. So we're sitting on the pitch, tightening up our boots.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to you, Duke, you're hogging all the room. Push over. All right.
Did you lose me over the side?
So you pushed over, and I'm talking thousands and thousands of feet, and there was like a quaint hamlet, village, whatever you want to call it, on the bottom.
And I'm sure there are tons of places like that.
And you're just sitting on the pitch,
Yeah.
and you lose your balance sitting,
Which I can do easily.
and you went, like that.
Now
You
it's
went,
gone.
hawk. So again, this is a dream. I reached out to grab you. I grabbed your sleeve. It was a flannel shirt,
course.
good for hiking.
Yeah.
And of course, in the dream, weird things happen. So I grab on to your sleeve, and the sleeve goes about 20 feet, okay? And finally, your body escapes your shirt and you go over the ledge. And dude, it was so realistic. And I've known you for like 40 years.
Did you wake up at that point?
No,
or?
I was still
Really?
dreaming. And you went over in clearest voice. If I hadn't seen you in 10 years, I could say, that's my buddy Duke's voice. You went over and a blood curdling.
Really?
And I remember watching the Duke flying down, and I remember saying, dying's not very cool, but this is a horrible, horrible way to die.
Wow, that's quite the dream.
And you're just going over, and I could see your body just going like that, and I could hear you going, ah!
But you didn't still wake up at that moment?
I did. Oh, I can tell you, if you're going to ask me, did I see you slam against the ground?
Yeah,
no,
that's good.
because a gust of wind came, and I had to flatten myself up on that little pitched roof. And then, and it was the real McCoy. I mean, it was scary. And like I said, I woke up, my hands are all sweaty,
Really?
and it's like, and I got up, washed my hands, and went back to bed. So that's my story of the day.
Because if I don't write, I never write down dreams, but I just tend to, sometimes, and I've been dreaming a lot. I mean, usually right when I wake up, a lot of times I'll remember them pretty well, but you remember, well, I guess not your run-of-the-mill dream.
No.
Interesting. Sometimes I'll dream and wake up and I'm back in like my free press days or radio days. Oh, God, I got to get this story. I'm on the air in like 2 minutes, and I'm so happy to wake up when I'm just sweating, whatever.
I've
that's
had
quite the dream.
Numerous dreams about my previous employer, about something going wrong there.
At Bouillet Fasces?
Yeah, and of course I was the head of purchasing, like running out of things.
Big job.
And having to shut down the whole plant because of me. And then I'd wake up and you don't know what a sense of relief is until you find out, like, it's just a dream.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that was a dream, Hawk. Glad to still be with you.
So, all right, we might as well talk sports. That I haven't seen you in 48 hours. So, I do have a question, and I don't listen to 101.3.
Those guys do.
And I know you listen.
They're not on today because they had hockey or something.
Okay.
They had national, but those guys do a good job.
But I did see in the Free Press a few days ago that they fired their sports director, Brady Farkas.
You're kidding me.
No, I wouldn't.
This. Are you sure this wasn't another dream?
No, that was.
I mean, because Brady's there, a young guy who's very solid. I mean, he's not on the show anymore.
I actually subscribed to the Free Press about a week and a half ago.
I wonder if the show's gone because they weren't on. That's funny you mentioned that because I tried to pick up on 101.3 the Red Sox game, not last night, but the Sunday night with the Yankees, probably coming back from the lake after golf.
Okay.
And I couldn't find the Red Sox game on 101.3, which seemed weird. I finally got it on, I think, TIC in Hartford, just driving back to my house. But I'm going, that's weird. Why wouldn't the Red Sox game be? Because they carry, I think, every game.
Yep.
And, of course, now today's Wednesday. Yesterday I was just immersed in weather. I don't think if I came upon the Monday, I forget if I got Arnie and Rich, but I forget if I listened Monday. But did they say anything about the show in general?
Ratings were low.
Because in the past they've touted their great ratings and stuff.
And so I'm thinking, again, I don't listen to the show. I'm at that time of the day I'm busy. So I'm going to myself.
3 to 6.
Duh. Of course, ratings. You couldn't pay me enough to watch or listen to a sports show up until we just restarted the show last week. And of course, the folks here at the station, hey, Hawk, when you starting the show back up? Hello, when there's sports. So, I mean, for 4.5 months, there was literally nothing to talk about. So
although for the record, obviously
your
your national shows, I mean, the Dan Patricks of the world seem to have done okay.
Dan Patrick would bring in actors and stuff like that.
Sure.
I mean, it's a sports show, and I love Dan Patrick.
And again, for the record, the 101.3 folks, they're hooked into ESPN and would have
they switched over to Fox, I believe.
What's that?
If you read the article, maybe
I didn't read the article, but I'm just saying they hook into ESPN in the past. I don't know if things have changed.
But I think they switched over to Fox earlier this year.
They have on 101.3, they pick up Colin Coward, who is on Fox. They have a mixture of folks, but they have Dan Patrick. They kind of pick and choose.
Yeah.
But tell me more about what you read.
I think it occurred last Thursday.
So you're saying they fired Brady
Literally
Farkas?
fired him called him into the office, and
Wow.
and he's done.
But did they reference the afternoon show, which is his key part? I mean, I can't imagine they wouldn't have mentioned the afternoon show, of which he's 1/3 part
Right.
with Rich Haskell
Rich Hill,
and
or
Arnie.
Haskell,
Rich
I'm sorry.
Haskell, who's a great guy.
Yeah.
And Arnie, who does actually a national Fox show on the weekends, I think, who drives me a little crazy.
Yeah.
But Brady and Rich are very solid. But so they didn't, you don't remember if they referenced the afternoon show?
Well, they did, and I
So
mean,
what
that's
they-
their drive time. That ratings were low.
Right, but did they say, right, but you're not in, but the question is the show gone? Did they?
That I can't tell you.
they
That
just
I
said
don't know.
Oh, but as in explaining why they fired him.
Yeah. So
Boy, that's funny, because those books come out maybe just once every 3 months or so, because at the time before, they spent a lot of time talking about it. I don't blame them, I assume accurately, saying their ratings were really high. They were really, so happy with great ratings. So,
Yeah.
wow. Do you still have that story?
about a week and a half ago, I
a
subscribed
week and a half ago?
to the free press online. I think it only
did
cost
ya?
me $39
I just actually gave
for a
him
whole
some
year.
bucks for Sunday delivery for like $1 for 3 months. Against my better judgment.
So
Wow.
that story is still there. So if I'll click on it tonight and print
Okay.
it for you.
Okay, thanks.
And
Wow,
like I
that's
said, I knew
interesting
you
news.
listened to it.
Oh, and I've
but-
had good word. They do a good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
But that's interesting because there was no Red Sox game Sunday night, like on local
Playing the Yanks,
radio,
yeah.
would seem weird.
Yep.
And now that you mentioned it, they picked up something else today. So I'm wondering if that show's gone.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody else out there can
Yeah.
address that.
So-
thanks for mentioning that. I'm stunned by that news.
Yeah, I just wrote it because I knew you listened. So now, Duke,
Interesting.
if I die and went to heaven, it would be like today. So I went golfing at 2:20 today.
Oh, really?
And albeit without you, but our good buddy Joe and Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
We play 9 holes,
Yeah.
and as much rain as we had,
Yeah.
it was a little soft in spots,
But
but
not-
we
not wicked
knew
soft.
how barren. Is that the right word? The course was.
Yeah. Did the ponds look? I mean, could you could.
Couple of the ponds looked like they went
Yeah.
up. So I did that, went home, took notes, took a shower
Yeah.
during the show. So after, I'll pick up the lovely Mrs. Nighthawk.
Yeah.
I'm going to head over to St. Albans Diner. I don't know if I'm going to get a salad or a big breakfast. So when I go home, finally get home tonight,
Yeah.
I've got the Nats
Wow.
to watch.
Yeah.
I've got the Canadians to watch.
Wow.
And the Celtics to watch.
Wow.
Thank you to the
that right?
inventor of
Celtics
the
are playing again, having
DVR.
played-
They're playing at 9 o'clock
Having
tonight.
played last night, I watched some of the game.
Yeah. So the
Wow.
Bruins were down 2-1 against Tampa
As in today?
They had a 4 o'clock game today. So
Maybe that's what I was on 101.3 then.
So as of 6 o'clock going into the third
Wow.
period, they were down 2-1. Of course, they lost to Philly the other day 4-1.
This is just their second game.
Yeah.
Okay.
And whether they take it seriously or not, I don't know. I'm not a Bruins guy.
This is a round robin, this
It's
first
a-
series for the
right,
Bruins?
a round robin.
And it just would help their seeding if they did well?
It's exactly what it is.
Okay.
And I was telling Joe on the golf course, well, my feeling is I feel bad for the Bruins, even though they're my arch enemy.
Right, but
is
they're having a
had
legit great season. Yeah.
Just a great season.
Yeah.
Tuca will probably be the runner-up for Vezina this year.
Yeah.
Pasternak had an unbelievable year.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've always said this team has been built to be a playoff team. I mean, they have skill, and they got toughness, great goaltending.
Yeah.
But, to turn that switch
Sure.
back on.
Sure.
Now, let's see, they're playing Tampa, and I think they have Washington this weekend. So they'll be reseeded. Now, if they lose tonight, just say they finish 4 out of the 4 teams, they would be seeded the 4th team. So hence, they would play the first round, the 5th-ranked team. Who's the 5th-ranked team? That's currently the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are tied 1-1 with the Canadians. And let's be honest, they'll win tonight and they'll win Friday. And Montreal is played pretty good. And as
they won their first game in
overtime. And as a Canadians fan, I can tell you the difference between our team and other very good teams is we have some good players on the team, but we have no stars whatsoever.
Seems like I've been calling you guys. This seems like such a
faceless.
colorless team,
Yeah,
kind of.
you know, when you think of Canadians, you think
Although
of
I guess Carey Price
And
would be
Carey
the
Price
one,
is
yeah.
playing better than I've seen him play in years. But, you know, we don't have a Pasternak on the team. We don't have a Brad Marchand on the
Yeah.
team. We don't have a Patrice Bergeron on the team.
Yeah.
We just have no stars.
Yeah.
I mean, for crying out loud, our first line center is Philippe Dagneau. You know,
Wow.
like who, what?
Boy, that really is a colorless team.
Yeah, it's, you know, they work hard, but it gets to a certain point that you have to have some skill in their, you know, their hustle and work ethic has kept them in the game. They lost 3-1 the other night. One was on an empty net goal. 2 goals against Carey were errors by the defense.
Yeah.
One was by the forward not coming down. Drives me nuts. Not back
yeah.
checking, picking up his man, and
And
Sidney Crosby.
who they lose to?
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Penguins.
Right, best of 5. So they play tonight, 8:10, and then they have the 1 o'clock game Friday, which I can assure you the DVR will be working. I mean,
Wow.
I
So
mean,
you got a good night. I even flipped over to the Red Sox are just pathetic. It's not
Yeah.
an unfair. God, I happened to, again, watching mostly weather yesterday, loving kind of a classic coastal rainy, windy day. But I flipped over and watched Maz and Felger for a while, and those guys have nothing on. You know, they love to pound people, but they were pounding the Red Sox.
Red Sox,
But
right?
I was going to say, I flipped over to your Nats last
Yeah.
night, they were up 5-3 at the time. They did win.
Yeah, they won 5-3. Yeah, we can talk baseball here. As I said,
whatever.
And I'm going to say it every week. It's a great year to tank, and it's not really so much tanking.
Yeah.
It's probably probably without question, the most unskilled pitching staff in the history of our lifetime with the Boston Red Sox.
For the Red Sox. Unreal.
Currently, out of 30 major league teams, Duke,
Yeah.
they rank 28th in ERA,
Yeah.
5.78 with only the Phillies and the hapless Seattle Mariners
Wow.
being behind them.
And they had probably their best pitcher last night, who's active these days, Mr. Evaldi, who was, I guess, lights out. I didn't see the early part of the game. He was lights out into the 4th inning, according to the TV. Remy and company, he got jobbed and walked somebody in the 4th, and then somebody hit a homer. They got 2 runs.
Yeah.
Anyway, but he was great early and ended up giving up, I guess, 4 or 5 runs.
Yeah.
But they're pathetic.
Yeah.
But how about this? I'm watching the end of the game. They had the bases loaded, and it was against Tampa at Tampa. Down 5-1. I guess they loaded the bases in the top of the 9th. Jackie Wright had two guys on. Jackie Bradley comes up. Mr. Streaky, and unfortunately his good streaks get him, maybe a 230 lifetime average? Or
He's about
am I a little high,
234.
maybe?
No, you're right
234?
around there. Yeah.
He was in an 0 for 20 streak at that point, having led the majors for the first 2 games.
Yeah.
He got off to like a 5 for 7 start. 0 for 20. He gets up and a high bound to the shortstop, and he beat it out. They checked the replay. It was a classic tie, which I guess still goes to the runner.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that stopped an 0 for 20 streak. Great. So guess who that brought up? Mr. Benintendi. Benny comes up next and strikes out, calling. I love my guys taking a call, 3rd strike, especially with the game on the line. And guess what he is now to start the season? How about 2 for 29?
He's 2 for
29.
2 for 29. That's a .06 batting average. Now,
And this is a guy, again, it's such a weird season, but
Right.
after having had a kind of a mediocre year last year, someone they have pretty good thoughts about, as I do, but boy, not a good look so far.
and that's part of Benintendi had an off year last year. And
Yeah.
granted, he's in the embryo stage of his career.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the take is after these 60 games,
And
this year.
how fair is it to, but anyway, he's off to a horror, but taking, how that drives me crazy. Taking a call 3rd strike with the game, got the
Right.
bases loaded. I think he was a tying run at that point.
And that's my
And it was a marginal pitch, but hey, you can't take a marginal
that's my
pitch.
thought process. Even if the ump is off by an
Sure,
inch,
you can't take. Why
when you're
would you
8 years
ever?
old
Yeah,
and your coach,
yeah,
probably your father, will say, Richie, anything close with 2 strikes, swing at it.
Absolutely.
Don't be dependent on the umpire
Sure.
whether you get to
Sure.
first base or not.
basic stuff
Right.
there.
because again, if ump misses, it's only by a half inch. You swing at the ball. And not only that, to me, it's human nature. You're up there.
Yeah.
You want to hit the ball.
But the Sox showed a little life against the Mets. They won 2 games against the Mets out in New York, then moved over to the Yankees, and it looked like Sunday night they might salvage the 3rd game of that. I had flipped to another station only to come back after Aaron Judge hit his 2nd homer to effectively give the Yanks, a 9-7 win in a sweep.
Yeah, we're playing the Mets right now, and they have a ton of injuries. Their starting center fielder last night was cut today. I mean, just outright cut. It's funny how this pandemic season's working because the Miami Marlins played last night. That's their 4th game of the year. And the aforementioned New York Mets has played 12 games already.
Wow.
So
I just thought of a stat. I'm not you're a much better stat guy.
I love stats.
But I just heard this stat watching one of the Red Sox, DeGrom pitch one of the games, and the Red Sox got a few runs off him. How good is this guy? Here's a great stat. Maybe you heard it.
I think he's won the Cy Young the last 2 years.
Has he won 2 years in a row?
Yeah.
Here's a stat in his starts, and I forget the number of starts, but over a number of years.
Yeah.
Guess what percentage of his starts do you think has he given up 1 run or less? I mean, for most pitchers, you'd think that'd be a pretty small stat, right? 5% or something?
Yeah.
How about almost half? I think 47%. Almost half his starts, 1 run or less. That's unreal.
Yeah. I can't remember, but I think he had a streak going like forever of not giving up more than 3 runs.
As in the good old quality starts.
DeGrom is certainly the best pitcher in national, if not all.
So you put him, baseball. What about, you love your guy Clayton Kershaw. Who would you pick between those two?
Right now, DeGrom, unfortunately, and I still think
Clayton's
Kershaw back. He's been dealing with a bad back for the last 3 years.
Is his windup? I watched him a little bit. Was it the first game?
Yeah, he's got a funky windup.
And has always had that?
Yeah, he's always had that. Okay. But, not that I've ever had any major back problems, but people tell me.
Same here.
It never comes back to 100%.
Yeah, you don't want back problems. Yeah. But isn't that an incredible stat about DeGrom?
Yeah.
I mean, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah. And the Mets are such a horrible team.
Is that right?
And if you remember, and it's a long ways away, last winter, do you remember the manager they hired?
I mean, they hired one of the Astros guy who didn't for a couple of days.
Carlos Beltran. And of course, he was involved in
a long time.
Cheating, about 48 hours with a cheating scandal with the Astros. And, you ask who the big winners are this year during this pandemic season. It's the Houston Astros. Because everybody at the 1st of April, we're just ready to boo these guys and just holler at it.
Boy, that makes me think of, I heard a little talk about this a while ago. I haven't heard it recently, but if the Red Sox, they're now 3-8 start, I think. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Ron Renick's not exactly, and he's got a horrible team. The manager, bench coach for Alex Cora, I guess, last season. But he's not exactly getting rave reviews. I'm just wondering, it seems like I heard a little loose talk before. Alex Cora, and you asked me that months ago, I would have said,
I do have a question
maybe you
for you.
did, and I probably said, Hawk, he's gone. I'm wondering. I think we may be hearing more about Alex. He did give a long interview, I think, with Shaughnessy in the Globe a while ago, finally kind of talked about stuff.
So that is my question.
And he's just suspended for like one year, I think.
1 year. So the season ends the last week of October.
Yeah.
And will there be a Black Monday where managers are being fired?
Yeah.
And how much fault is this of Ron Renick? I have very little in my
probably
opinion.
Not much.
But could you see Renick being relieved of his duties on Monday and maybe having a press conference on Wednesday welcoming back Alex Cora?
And how about this? Maybe to make him feel a little better and keep him making some money, just a bench coach.
Absolutely.
Which is probably what you were thinking.
Yeah.
I would have said months ago, that's insane, forget it. Alex Cora's history, but if they have the pathetic season they're seemingly headed for, boy, I guess stranger things could happen.
And again, with this...
And what do the Red Sox care? They're going to get... If they're getting so much grief about a terrible team, how many people are going to pile on them more for rehiring Alex Cora? Probably not a big issue.
So I checked 2 nights ago. If the season had ended then, the Red Sox have the 5th overall pick in June.
Is that right?
So, and again, they generally pick around 28th year after year after year.
Yeah, but they're
So,
starting. I don't even know Osich. I don't even know some of these guys.
You know, and I saw somewhere, let me, what's this guy's name?
Of course, they have him in Eduardo and Hawk. I'm sure you saw Eduardo Rodriguez coming off a great year.
Yeah.
Should have won. Had he won one more game at the end, it would have been 20 wins. But they're sitting him. He's gone
Yeah.
for the season.
So
Good decision.
they have a pitcher by the name of Matt Hall. And again, I know baseball pretty well.
Yeah.
And
Means
literally
nothing.
half this pitching staff I've never. Now, Matt Hall last year pitched for the Toledo Mud Hens with an ERA of 5.40.
You're serious.
You're supposed to say, Shirley, you can't be serious.
Boy, surely you can't be serious. And you're
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley again. Okay. But
Is that right? Chaim Bloom's grabbed some of these guys. Sounds like a few have been maybe reclamation projects or something.
Dylan Covey, Jeffrey Springs.
Wow.
Ryan Brazier, I've heard of. Chris Mazza.
Wow. Feel free to
Matt
throw
Hall.
colorless, as I call your beloved Canadians colorless.
Josh Osich.
Right.
You know,
Who are
Austin
these
Bryce,
guys?
Phillips Valdez.
Yeah, he pitched. He came in last night in relief, I think, of Aldi.
You know, Zach Godfrey, who's banged around. And again, I think Ron Ronick's the type of guy I'd love as a next door neighbor.
Sounds like a very decent guy.
Great
Pretty
guy.
straight guy.
And I think your scenario is probably perfect.
Boy,
Bring Alex back and say, Ron, you know, you're still going to make, you know,
Yeah. And
seven.
Alex, you screwed up big time, but I think we think basically you're a decent guy. Boy, I mean, of all the seasons to bring Alex back, this looks like it'd be the perfect time.
And I always ask you this question, and you
Yeah.
always say, Hawk, I don't know. What's the status of Dustin Pedroia?
Oh, boy, and I've thought about it. I think I even wrote that down on one of my notebooks. I haven't even heard his name mentioned. Oh,
Well, he's been out, for 2 years now?
no, 2 years, 2 years anyway, maybe effectively closer to 3. Yeah, I guess he's still cashing a pretty good paycheck and stuff. My thought was, God, can get something, make him a coach or something, but I literally, Hawk, haven't heard his name in months.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, and I'll probably...
But he's not playing
Yeah,
again.
and I'll say this every week on the show, Red Sox fans, keep the faith, because hopefully Chris Sale can resemble close to what he used
that
to
might
be.
be the best news. Perfect timing for Chris Sale to go under.
Your number one pitcher next year. Your number two pitcher.
Rodriguez hopefully comes back.
Number two, I'm sure they're going to take their money, the savings that they do now have, and get a legit number two pitcher behind him.
Oh, when you call me Rodriguez, I think he could. I mean,
I would put Rod. The problem with Erod.
Won 19 hockey. Won 19 games last year.
His ERA was close to 4. He, I believe, had the most runs scored for him as any starting pitcher. But he's a good number 3 pitcher. But the problem with Erod is he's got a very consistent history of injuries.
Although last year,
right?
in there.
But every other. But Erod 3, Evaldi would be a good number 4.
And Evaldi's shown a little life this year.
But he's a 4.28 ERA pitcher, number 4, and again, maybe one of these bums could turn out to be a decent number 5.
I agree. If they're all healthy, that's not a terrible
Right, that's
staff.
a very good pitching staff. And again, they have to go out and if they want a good pitcher, minimum, it's going to cost them $25 million a year, and you're probably going to have to give them a 7-year contract.
Yeah.
And I don't have the free agent list, but November's coming a lot quicker.
Yeah, and the suggestion we heard from old friend caller Bobby last week with Evaldi, with this season just seeming like a absolute disaster. Why waste your time on anything? He was talking about, hey, have Evaldi pitch a little more and then sit him down so he doesn't happen to screw up his arm.
Yeah.
I've heard a crazier thought.
Yeah.
I'm prepared to totally, absolutely concede.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm unhappy we're seeing baseball. And again, we'll see how long this lasts.
Yeah.
We already had, Cardinals, Tigers canceling a 4-game series?
Yep.
I mean, let me ask you.
We
give
just
me the
got
percentage.
off. We just got off 4 days in a row without playing. We played last night. We played tonight,
Right.
and guess what tomorrow is? It's scheduled day off.
Off day.
So
You give me what percentage? Give me a percentage chance, Hawk. What percentage chance will baseball season, do what they're going to do? There's 60 games. I should say for some teams.
yeah, I am
Are you confident they'll make it?
80% they'll get through.
Boy, that's higher than.
Yeah. No,
I'd
no.
go. I might be closer to 50 or so.
And most people are like you, but the answer to many questions is generally money.
Yeah.
And there's just too much money invested into this. And with these guys getting the COVID, they're young men.
Yeah. Oh, they should.
They're in the age
hopefully they'll
group
all
where people
survive.
don't die.
Right. Hopefully they'll all
If
survive.
they were someone old, like 70, do you know any? There you go. Like, trust me, if Andrew Benintendi got COVID and you got COVID, I would have
I think
zero.
I put my money on Andrew.
I would say, the Duke's in trouble. The big guy's in trouble.
Of course.
But I will tell you this, in general, it's been a little weird, but I'm getting very used to watching the
getting into
games
it?
with no fans.
Yeah. I trust you enjoy the cut up. Do the Nets have the cut up figures behind home plate? Do they do that?
They don't. They don't.
When I told Ian that, who's no sports guy, my kid, he thought I was kidding, I think.
Now, the thing about the Nationals, and they draw pretty well, but the seats behind home plate, and I haven't checked in a few years, but they were going for $350.
Really?
And they were the big high back cushion seats, and all the food and beer you can drink
Oh, is that
for
right?
free. It was part of the package.
I've heard of crazier.
So they could have 35,000 people in the stands and maybe have like 20 people behind at home plate. It's a really awkward look.
But you're getting into baseball. It doesn't feel
the Nats
that
are,
weird.
of course, coming off a world championship, and not only that, they expanded the playoffs. The top three divisional winners, then the second place winners make it. That's 6 plus the 2 best records. So 8 out of 15 teams make it. The Nats pitching staff, third best in all of baseball. I mean, they're good. That's how they won the championship last year. And the Red Sox score runs. Okay, they always score runs, but
used to anyway.
But it will show out this year with no pitching. It's they won't even play 500. So. They'll be contenders. Now, of course, the LA Dodgers with Mookie was off to a little slow start.
How's Mookie doing?
He's got a finger problem. He's missed a few games. But the Dodgers on paper, look loaded.
Boy, if you're the Dodgers, more than a little pressure for having a lot of good teams for a lot of years and still the elusive World Series.
And
that's kind of, of course, the Nats had kind of the same issue.
Well, didn't the Astros beat the Dodgers 2 years ago in the World Series?
Yeah.
Right? And I can assure you, if they were all in the same restaurant, it would be a major brawl.
Yeah.
The Dodgers hate the Astros. They really
feel they got totally jobbed. Understandable concern.
Yeah. So
baseball. So you're really kind of getting back into your Nats anyway.
Yes, and
like I said, for the record, I flipped over to your Nats for about a good half hour last night.
And as far as hockey is concerned, it's such a fast game. You barely notice there's no people in the stands.
That hadn't crossed my mind.
I think football is definitely going to be the worst. Basketball, they're getting really nice coverage in Orlando. Some nice camera work down there.
But basketball is maybe the weird. Well, I guess baseball is too. But where they're playing and stuff, it is kind of weird to see no fans and stuff. I feel it's just like a really nice high school gym or something without the fans.
Yeah,
but I guess basketball is doing okay.
Hockey and basketball have done a great job with the electronic stuff. Now, NBA, they have fans, and I'm not sure how they do it. If we're in front of our computer, maybe they can get our face and put them as an electronic fan, because Paul Pierce was in the stands the other day. His face.
Right? The truth?
Yeah, the truth. Now,
any concern about the Celtics early on? Again, 1-2 start, right? You want to say that?
Let me finish my...
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. John Jay today, outfielder, he's currently on Arizona Diamondbacks. I read this on ESPN.
Means nothing to me.
And he's been a suitcase type player, a good ball player, generally not a starter. So he hit his 10-year anniversary in the major leagues. Well, how was that significant? he has now qualified for full Major League Baseball pension, meaning at age 62, Duke, he will garner $230,000 a year out of his pension plan. Now, there's been close to 20,000 Major League players over the years. Only 6%.
Is that right? 20,000?
Yeah, only 6% of players ever achieve the 10-year mark.
Wow.
So I thought that was interesting.
And again, 10 years, that just kicks him up to like the highest level possible?
That's the highest level possible.
Okay. I mean, anybody, say somebody plays a year, they get a few bucks, I assume?
Yeah.
But 10 years kicks you up to the highest level.
You figure he'll get $230,000 Major League pension. Social Security probably will get him $22,000 a year.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. So,
interesting.
So, Celtics you want to get into?
I watched some. You watch every second.
Every second.
I watched some of the game last night. They got back to within 3, I think, in the third period, and
they just seemed disinterested.
Yeah,
they really.
And there
do.
again, this is a team that was playing pretty well, but just the big delay. I mean, how can you expect how can you expect a team to come back and just be where they were before? I mean, who knows?
Yeah. It's the team. I love the Celtics, but they're like.
So not real impressed so far.
Jason Tatum, I'm not a big fan of him. I'm
not sure you've told me that before.
He's kind of a ball baby. Every time he goes underneath, he cries. And,
is that right? I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Jaylen Brown is too militant for me. I mean, instead of worrying about the world, concentrate on your game. And
so it sounds like your fandom of the Celtics is off a bit here.
If you remember, 11 years ago, 12 years ago now, when they won the championship, didn't like Kevin Garnett. I didn't like Paul Pierce. I didn't like Ray Allen. But I love the Celtics.
Right.
I root for the jersey, not the guy.
Probably the absence of Tommy Heinsohn most of the time. I know how much you love Tommy.
They haven't even mentioned Tommy Heinsohn.
They haven't even mentioned him?
No. I'm sure you noticed when Mike Gorman and Brian Scalabrine are doing the games.
They're not in Orlando,
I don't know
or are
if
they?
they're in the Burlington studios.
That's in Burlington, Mass.
Right. Do you know where Burlington, Mass is?
Oh, sure. I'm just outside Boston.
Okay.
Because the Red Sox guys are in, I think, They're just outside Boston, too.
So I think they're in Burlington, Mass.
Yeah, just northwest of Boston.
Mike and Brian, they're literally same distance as you and I. They have the big monitor in front of them, and Mike Gorman's doing the play-by-play. It sounds fine. I don't know if they're going to get the idea in the future. Well, why in the heck are we going to pay all this travel money, hotels, meals,
Who knows
when
if
you just can come from your home?
Right. Because the Red Sox TV guys, Remy Eck and Dave O'Brien, are in the same studio, but with a wall between them and stuff. I think Watertown, but right outside Boston. But that's a good point. The days of these great announcers going with the team, boy, they may be history.
Yeah, and I absolutely love Tommy Heinsohn, but he's at least 85, not 86 years old.
McGorman hasn't even mentioned his name.
They haven't mentioned his name, and certainly he qualifies as a person you don't want out in the public. And his health hasn't been all that swell the last couple of years anyways. And we're fortunate to have Scalabrine anyways. He's
Scal's good.
Extremely knowledgeable,
and
good sense of humor.
Gorman's tremendous.
And during halftime, Kendrick Perkins, ex-Celtic, is a riot. So
he'll speak his mind.
So, I don't know if I equate the Celtics with the Bruins where they don't feel these games are that important. Of course, the big question mark is Kemba Walker. As I mentioned, they're playing 9 o'clock tonight.
Hit a pretty nice shot at halftime last night. I saw
Guess who's not playing tonight?
Is that right? Not playing?
All right. They haven't played in four plus months, and he's got a foot problem or knee issue.
Brad Stevens, I saw a little bit of his post game last night. Stevens interview, did he mention, I think last night, that Kemba wasn't playing? Today he might have.
I got to be honest with you. I started watching his post game, but he's got his mask on, and it's just hard for me to watch.
He didn't seem, he was questioned, I saw a few questions, And the question, whoever the reporters seem, boy, Coach, you got some concerns, and all I heard him say was, hey, Miami played a great game. He didn't seem to have any particular concern about his guys, but I'm not sure I share that view.
Miami can lights out with the
What about my old
three-pointers.
Duke guy, Mr. Winslow? He's still with Miami, right?
He must be hurt.
No, he didn't play
he's been a
last.
bust.
I'm just thinking of him.
Yeah, he's been a bust because I remember
He looked like he was
on draft day. Danny Ainge was so in love with Justice Winslow. He offered every draft pick the Celtics owned
they
to
wouldn't
move
do
up.
it.
I'm trying to remember if it was the 9th, 10th, or 11th position to get Winslow, and the Heat wanted no.
So a bust, is that a little strong? I mean, he hasn't been.
No, he really hasn't done
stats,
much.
Really?
I mean, there's been a lot of Duke players, and you know me, I feel like if you're playing for arguably the best college coach in basketball, you might want, when you're 18, 19 years old, your basketball IQ still needs to, the Marvin Bagleys of the world haven't done anything.
But then you got guys like Jason Tatum, who does look like he's going to have a pretty good career.
If you remember, going into Duke, was voted the United States High School Basketball Player of the Year. But there's been a lot of
No, you're right.
Really, and it's not just Duke. I mean, you still need to develop your game. Now, the problem too is, and you can look at it, Jason Tatum that's been successful, is you're behind the 8 ball because once their rookie contract is up and they are a legitimate star, then you have to sign them to a max contract.
You pay him big buckos.
That leads to this quandary.
And the Red Sox, the Celtics did just that with Jaylen Brown, to maybe some people's surprise, maybe. Didn't they give him a big
Brown?
I'm sorry, who am I talking about?
Jaylen Brown.
Jaylen Brown. Didn't he get a big contract?
He got about $25 million a year.
Right.
The year
Basketball
before,
players.
Marcus Smart got around 18 to 20. And this is the problem with the Celtics. And it's not so much during the playoffs, but during the regular season, our lack of depth. Because you've got Gordon Hayward, who I like, but he's a better than average player. My opinion, Hayward should be on the second unit, being the gunner for there, because you've got Hayward, Brown, Tatum, Kemba, Walker, 4 shooters. And of course
many.
the center, Tice, who plays well, and Cantor. They're a good two-headed position there. But Gordon Hayward's making like $32 million a year, and he's got another year next year. So there's very little money to spend for the second unit, and there's just not that much talent.
We went months without anything. Some of their draftees and stuff, some of those guys looked a little, are they not even getting, none of those guys were even getting time?
No. Let's see.
I have to even think about their names. Ojeleye,
plays,
he's getting some time.
But he's like a mason. He's been throwing up a lot of bricks.
Right. But the guys that just drafted, nothing?
Romeo Langford, Grant Williams, they're not contributing at all.
Really? Celtic situation doesn't sound great. Huh?
And of course, again, in the playoffs, your starters are going to play much more minutes. The bench will get a lot smaller, where you may only go 8 deep.
Because there was a lot of fairly smart money on the Celtics, maybe really having a shot at this.
Yep.
Boy, you're sure not buying that, right?
No, not at all.
Maybe other people aren't either, having seen him for a few games.
Milwaukee, maybe before I die, I'll take time to learn how to pronounce.
The Greek freak, Giannis. Settle for
Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's going to end up winning back-to-back MVPs this year. Of course, Toronto is the defending champ. They have a good coach.
No Kawhi, but still not a bad team.
But they play good team basketball. Even Miami, who arguably has the best coach, in my opinion, Eric Spoelstra, is excellent. There's a lot of parity.
Philadelphia is a pretty decent
Philadelphia
team.
has been hasn't played up to their capability.
But still a pretty good team.
If they decided
do.
they wanted to. And at this point, if the season ended tonight, the Celtics would be playing the Sixers in the first round.
And you would certainly give edge to the Sixers, obviously, I assume.
It's 50-50 type.
50-50.
They've got Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. They've got some good players.
Yeah.
Our old friend Al Horford's on the team.
Yeah. Speaking of Dukies, Zion, wasn't he game to game? Has he played at all?
I think he has played, but
I haven't
it
noticed.
sickens my stomach when I read about him taking $400,000 about a month ago during his one and only year at Duke University, and he got caught. I know that happens to a lot.
I've talked to my good friend Roy, who pays a ton of attention to this, because Duke, in fact, the 1013 guy, Arnie, was giving Duke, everybody loves to give Duke grief, and understandable. Roy said that's totally unclear. I said, how can Duke be that stupid? And I guess the thing Zion did was hired an agent on the sly or something.
Yep.
But I'm not sure. I don't think it's an obvious thing that Duke knew what was going on here. Although I'm sure a lot of people love to think that. But Zion sounds like he was totally stupid about this.
Right.
I'm not sure Duke's culpable about that, for the record.
Well, Zion was going to get money regardless of where he ended up playing, and I don't know if his father or stepfather ended up with a $400,000. But it's amazing to me when these high school kids go to college to a top-notch program, all of a sudden their parent or parents end up in a brand new home. I mean, it's, you don't have to be Detective Clouseau to figure out.
Yeah, so you don't even know. I haven't even noticed. Actually,
we live in such a jaded society now. It just, stuff like that just rolls off our back.
The biggest Zion fan is Ms. Lauren, the former wife, who's totally into Zion. In fact, she just texted me because I said, paying any attention to, sports, and she's busy with her real estate over in Essex, New York, but she's been all over Zion.
Yeah. So.
And of course, the Pelicans, it seems like just to get Zion in the mix, they kind of just brought enough teams in just to get Zion from NBA's point of view, some attention. It kind of looked like that.
And a lot of things that the four major sports have done, I've been and I'm usually critical, but I'm uncritical, like the National League with the DH this year. If we were ever going to instill it, and I think they probably will.
Now is the year.
This is the time to play around with the rules, to do that, for them to expand the playoffs. Again, this is a crazy season. Some may look at it with the biggest asterisk ever.
Which I would certainly be one of those people. I'd be tempted to say, it just feels even weird to me to even include whoever wins the World Series if we get that far.
Yeah.
I almost don't think it's even fair to mix them into everybody else, but that's me.
Yeah. And with hockey going from 9, 10, 11, 12, and creating a qualifying round, best of 5. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's got Montreal in it, which is the hockey capital of the world. The Chicago Blackhawks made it, and and that arguably is the hotbed of U.S. hockey.
Mark, excuse my extreme ignorance here, but basketball, everybody's in Orlando in the bubble 3 different courts. Hockey, are we talking, where are the hockey folks? Are we talking in a few?
Scotia Bank Place in Toronto. And they're playing, and I've heard forever, the best ice in the world.
I'm sorry, everybody
plays, right.
Okay,
like Montreal's playing tonight at 8. Guess what time they're playing Friday?
Like 1 o'clock
You got it, dude.
So they're doing just obviously a bunch of games every day.
Right, every day.
Okay, so everybody's in Toronto. Which is kind of ironic, seeing as the Blue Jays were kicked out of Canada and couldn't play in Toronto.
Yeah, and there's no COVID whatsoever with that I know of.
So hockey's had no...
not that I know of. I mean, I think maybe Pasternak might have had it.
Sounds like...
But... again.
And he also got docked a little bit for going out in the town one night or something?
Yeah, and I know one NBA player left the bubble, went to a strip club, and, but again, not that I want anybody to get it, but I really don't concern myself when the 25-year-old, because I can tell you this, grade school kids this year, last I heard, there were 53 pandemic deaths on a normal year, just the general flu.
Yeah.
There's 100 deaths a year. And that's why I'm an advocate for kids going back to school on a full-time basis.
Yeah, I think the school thing is just very, very murky. There's a poll in Vermont, it was dead even.
Yeah, exactly.
42% wanted their kids to go back, 42% didn't.
Yeah, and I'm
we'll
one of
see
those
what
guys,
happens.
I'm just really big into education.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody would say they're
Yeah.
not big into education.
But
Look,
parents
Ben, even your buddy Joe, who I think is in line with you on a lot of things, he disagreed with you about school.
right,
but saying the case in Indiana.
Well, let me say this about Joe. Joe's 10 years older than me. He's 72 years old, and my opinion
color his thinking
probably would be a lot different at 72 versus being here at 62.
But there was a case that got a lot of attention in Georgia, I think Gwinnett County, outside of Atlanta, where I think they had started school, and there were just tons of people supposedly sick or something, but school's a tough. I mean, I don't have strong feelings,
Right.
but it strikes me as a very, that's the
this
toughest
is
issue out there.
If we had 10 people around this table, it'd be 5 to 5. There's no question in my mind.
Right.
So let me kid you. I don't want to wait till the end of the show. This is
Let's
the
talk some
first
golf, too, at
major
some point, right?
in golf
In
this year.
anything.
There's only 3 majors this year. The Open, also known as the British Open.
Open Championship's gone.
Last month, they declined to partake in it.
Yeah.
So, and you're the golf expert on this panel.
Hardly an expert.
So the tournament starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
The TPC Harding
Park in San Fran.
I have no idea where that's. I know it's
think-
San Francisco. I doubt if it's in San Francisco.
I think, right?
Tell me about the
Well,
facility.
I wish I could tell you. I think I've seen just some brief TV coverage. I'm not on top. I can't tell you. I think it is in the city. I'm trying to think of the park. I know the city. I mean, I love San Fran. Physically, it's. I've said before. Maybe I wouldn't say it now if I had to pay for a place to live. But I've often said, force me to live in a city, I'd take San Fran. I mean, I've walked around. I've walked over Golden Gate Bridge, Marin County. I mean, it's a spectacular city. Anyway, there's a really good course. There's a city park on, I think, the northwest side of the city, and it's a famous course that I can't. It's not Harding Park, but I think it actually may be in the city. Although it seems a little funny that the city itself could have more than one really good course. But anyway,
correct me if I'm
it's
wrong.
San Fran area.
San Francisco, and I think might be number 2 in the country for real estate prices. I think Greenwich,
Right up
Connecticut
there.
is number 1, and
Where
Greenwich, Connecticut.
Where my
of
good
course-
college friend Pamela just moved out of a while ago.
Right, and Greenwich is, of course,
Of
right
course, the
outside
former
the
wife,
city.
I mentioned
New York
Lauren,
City.
she's from Darien,
Yeah.
right next to Greenwich.
Right. So I couldn't even imagine.
Oh, yeah,
if
San Fran's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my guess would be this golf course says it's in San Francisco. It's probably 15, 20 miles away.
Could be, and I'm sorry I don't have a better handle. I'm not positive it's not in the city, but anyway. But PGA tomorrow.
I mean, is there any history with this golf
Yeah, I
course?
think so. I've heard of it, but I think so. I'm sure it's a really, really good course.
Yeah.
Your top threesome tomorrow, Justin Thomas coming off his 13th PGA victory. I know not your favorite, but a
Right.
heck of a golfer. JT, Tiger, and Rory will play together the first 2 days.
Okay.
And
And I was-
ESPN has the early round
Okay.
coverage.
I looked at tee times,
Yeah.
and I
No, you're ahead
wondered
of
that.
me.
How do they come up? I mean, why isn't Tiger Woods? How does he always end
Of course,
up
you know
with
what
good
they do
players?
with tee times,
Because
though.
how come Tiger Woods doesn't end up with a Richard Carpenter and a Rick Tatro with 2 bums he's playing with? He always seems to be teed up with.
No, just because
good-
they want a marquee group.
So, are you telling me
Yeah.
the organizers?
But I don't know how, they can obviously do what they want.
We'll
I
say-
don't think there's any,
Tiger Woods, we
Yeah.
will match him with, well, they're not going to say Joe Blow from Idaho will play with Tiger,
Right.
and Xing Xing Shu from Taiwan will.
no, I think they can do exactly what they want. And
Okay.
just in terms of tee, and I didn't see tee times, of course, it's West Coast, obviously. I think ESPN checks on at 4 o'clock tomorrow,
The
1
last
o'clock our time.
tee time, I think, is 5:30 Eastern time tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, and of course, what they do, which you obviously well know, not everybody maybe does, but again, for the tee times, if you play early on a Thursday, if you're the first guy out on a Thursday, you're the last guy out on a Friday. And just depending on weather, that can just be a huge factor. It's just kind of luck of the draw.
And I will admit, I forgot to check the 4-day forecast for San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, typically is usually, fortunately, boy, I'm telling you, keep me away from floods and wildfires. I didn't hear one reference to it today. Sounds like another really bad wildfire outside L.A., nowhere near San Fran. But boy, wildfires out there are just scary. But
Now,
anyway,
my memory-
weather's usually pretty decent.
Is Brooks Koepka, has he
Brooks
won the
Koepka. I think he's two-time defending
last
PGA
2 years
champ.
he's won the PGA.
And actually, it turned in a very good effort. He's like in FedEx standings. He's out of the 150, or was, but actually showed some life in Memphis at the St. Jude Classic, and actually, I think came in tied for second. I think he was one stroke behind JT, who I guess was ahead of him and maybe finished on the 18th, and he took a chance. There's water on the 18th in Memphis, and I didn't see too much of that, but he hit it into the water. But he's one unapologetic guy. I know you're not real high on him. He's got some swagger. I mean, he's not your typical just, I kind of like him because he goes against the grain.
He's got a gutter mouth.
Yeah, I mean, but he's
I've
also
heard him
not
throw
afraid.
F-bombs
Is that
numerous
right?
times on the golf
Well,
course.
I'm not impressed with that. But Hawk, I know you have some issues with the media. A reporter had, the cojones to ask him, Brooks, have you lost confidence in your game? Being like 180th, you can imagine how he. I don't have a problem with confidence. And for the record, he almost won the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a heck of a golfer.
Yeah.
He's had a knee injury, which I think has really hurt him.
Justin Thomas, I don't care for.
But JT's, he's a heck of a golfer. He blew a tournament a couple weeks ago and comes back and wins this one. But again, a stat for JT, Justin Thomas, this was, I think, his 13th PGA win, I think at age 27. And guess who tough guess, who are the only two players to have more wins at a younger age?
Elwood Woods.
Obviously,
Is that his
Tiger.
name, Elwood? Tigers?
Eldrick, I think.
Eldrick
or
Woods.
something.
And I'll go with Jack Nicklaus.
Yeah, right. The two obvious guys, but that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And Justin should have won a couple weeks. He had like a 3-shot lead with 4 holes to play, and uncharacteristically blew that.
Now,
He's a heck of a golfer.
Jordan Spieth is
Boy, Jordan.
motivated because he needs this to win the Grand Slam.
Yeah.
And his game hasn't. He's been playing okay, but he really has been the same the last 2-3 years. And that's the one thing we sit here. We like to think we know what we're talking about sports, but I have no idea when golfers get in the top of the world, they hit their zenith, and they don't just slowly descend. They just fall off the face of the earth.
Usually, although again, Phil Mickelson, who was fit, didn't he just turn 50?
I'm not sure.
I think so. He had a good tourney.
Phil's had
Memphis.
a good, consistent career, Hall of Fame career.
But again, if you're going to ask me who win, I just go back to what I always say. There's so many good golfers out there. A lot of very good golfers.
Is John Rahm from Spain still?
John Rahm, of course, became #1 briefly, he didn't have a great tourney in Memphis, and I forget, maybe the tournament before. What a great golfer.
Are you telling me John Rahm's not the #1 golfer anymore?
I think Justin Thomas, got it with his win last week.
Rahm had the title for what, 2 weeks? For 2 weeks?
I think so.
Interesting.
But a great golfer.
Okay, now here's my problem.
Easy guy to bet on.
With the tournament.
And Bryson DeChambeau, of course, getting news with his putting on, going against the grain, putting on 40 pounds or something, and hitting a lot of straight drives at 350, which gets the argument going, hey, we got to do something about equipment. We can't let these guys keep getting longer.
Now, do they do drug testing I assume they do, but you don't ever hear about it.
I never hear about it.
Like DeChambeau was about as wide as my finger a year ago. Now he's just...
But this was something he set out to do. I think he was real clear about what he was doing. I guess just wanted to get more yard. My guess is
he only could hit 325 before. Now he can hit 350.
Yeah.
But
there are tons of good golfers. But I'm kind of psyched, and I'm sorry I don't have a better handle on the court. Had I been getting my papers every day, you know how I love to be behind a computer screen. I typically buy newspapers, aside from the Wall Street Journal, which has one good sports page, but not a lot of golf, typically just Sundays now. So I'm just not reading the sports I used to.
Here's my problem, and I mentioned it to you about 40 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Later tonight, I'm watching baseball, hockey,
So what's your
in
order?
basketball.
What's your order of
Well,
watching
I go
this?
by the Nats play at 6:05. That'll
Yeah.
be, and I didn't see any scroll on the screen last night, which is great.
Yeah.
Then I'll watch hockey, and they don't do a scroll on the bottom. And then I'll watch the Celtic game. Now, basketball is certainly the quickest game to watch. It's only 48 minutes long.
That's how long it takes you to get through a game?
Foul shots.
Huh.
I don't watch foul shots
is that right?
because they're going to make 85% of them.
Oh, really?
Anyway, you call a timeout. Zoom.
That's impressive. You can get through a game in 48
I
minutes?
literally, when I watch basketball, the remote is in my hand
Really?
because I'm constantly using it.
Interesting.
Baseball is more of a game of banter. I mean, growing up listening to it on radio, which baseball is made for.
Baseball
right.
is so great on radio.
And it's such a easy game to imagine. A fly ball looped into left field drops in. Well, that's not hard to.
Speaking of great, John Sterling, I guess, I don't know if I think he's maybe missed some games. I think he's maybe been ill. But somebody covered for him for the Yankees, I guess. And I think Dan Patrick played the tape. He tried to, or this person did kind of give a homer thing that Sterling does. Dan Patrick said, please, enough. One guy wasn't happy.
Yeah.
But Sterling, we've talked about this before. He had I'm sure we've talked about this. He had an unbelievable streak, which I think ended maybe just last season, of like 6,000 or something straight games. I think since like 1980, he had never missed a game. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
I saw a feature on him a number of months ago.
Yeah.
And I think he's in his 80s now.
I think he's at least 80. I had no idea until like last year he was that old.
He has been married for decades.
Right?
The love of the game is what his life is all
and
about.
Still great pipes.
Yeah,
and I'll listen to Sterling and Susan Waldman, who's
they're as good as anybody else.
She's a Boston girl.
Oh, really? Yeah.
You can kind of tell. You can pick up her accent a little bit.
And she knows
but they're
the
very
game.
Good. Absolutely.
So they're good.
They're good.
The Red Sox have always had good announcers, even after they lost a couple years ago.
I almost wonder if I met Ken Coleman.
Ken Coleman back in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
He lived in Cohasset next to Hingham. I almost think I maybe ran into him at like Cohasset Country Club, maybe.
Ken Coleman was just great.
They've had Ned Martin. Oh Lord, or oh my God.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You're 8 years older than me. Do you remember? And I could be mistaken. Do you remember who Ken Coleman took over the broadcast from?
Was Ned Martin? Were they close? Oh, Kurt Gowdy.
Kurt Gowdy.
Talk about growing up with Kurt Gowdy.
Oh, you grew up with Kurt Gowdy?
I'm probably listening to baseball probably by 56, 57, or late 50s anyway, because that was my life from like age 8 with my friend Mark Rossi, who, remember Stat Guy, dug up. I said, Mark, who's been in Nashville forever, songwriter, bartender, whatever, still plays softball, I think.
Okay.
A year older than me. His brother actually is a very good musician who at least used to live in Colchester. I've seen him play in bluegrass bands once in a while, Neil Rossi. Anyway, what was I getting into?
Kurt Gowdy was the announcer for the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Then he got bumped up to the big leagues with the NBC announcer.
Okay.
Saturday game of the week, which used to be a big deal because back in the day when there was only 4 channels, and the only time you got to watch real players, regardless if they were your team or not, was Saturday afternoon at 2:00, where Kurt Gowdy and Tony Kubek as the color guy.
But I literally grew up with Kurt. But by late 50s, when I'm 8, 9, 10, I'm absolutely listening to a lot of Red Sox games.
And my fondest memories growing up with the Montreal Expos being an expansion team in 1969 at the tender age of 11. I had my little Japanese transistor radio right by my ear, and I just listened to Dave Van Horn, and he died before Duke Snyder took over for
probably
him.
Not going to help you with that.
Oh, boy. And Dave Taylor. Was it
Dave Geller?
Taylor. Russ Taylor was the color guy.
Never would have come
it was
up with
Dave Van Horn, right? And Dave Van Horn.
Was he still doing
Miami
Marlins game? He's still doing
right.
them?
And
Really?
he became the Nats announcer like at age 27, 28 years
Really?
old, and he was already bald on top of his
Really?
head.
I love these sport, yeah, the radio guys. We talked about Gorman, Heinsohn. I mean, there's so much a part of a real sports guy's life. I mean, I love these guys.
And
Joe Castiglione, Joe seems like he's got a son. His son is Duke. He's got a son, Duke.
Name Duke?
Name Duke.
Okay.
But Joe, I mean, you just grow up with the, and Eckersley, I told you, I love Eck. Eck is just so straight. I love Eck.
Yep.
And Dave O'Brien, I think, is very good, who kind of unfairly took a hit through no fault of his own. I mean, they kick out Don Orsillo for God knows why.
You know what? We
But
still
anyway,
don't
but
know.
Dave O'Brien is a very good guy. But I'm sure a lot of people, gee, Dave, we don't want you. Hey, don't blame it on Dave. It wasn't his fault.
Isn't that funny?
And
2.5 years later, we still don't know why.
Yeah.
Because I do catch him when the Nats play San Diego,
Yeah.
and he's still extremely stellar.
Yeah.
And to go from a baseball haven like Boston
Yeah.
to San Diego, which
Yeah.
is
They just said, whatever, want to go a different, whatever they say, different direction or something. But he
Right.
does some post-game, he does some
Duke,
playoff game
it's
stuff,
like the
right?
Dodgers saying to
Yeah.
Vince Scully, we want to go to a different direction.
Right.
Well, Vince retired a couple years
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
86,
Hey, Huck,
something
they'll
like
probably, how old I am. We talked about it. They'll probably tell me here at some point, hey, Duke, thanks, decent job, but
Well,
see ya.
Duke, your contract is up in October.
Anyway, but no, I felt bad. Orsillo
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah.
He and Remy, I mean,
Yeah.
what a great combo.
Now, I get all the Nats game. Of course, I have to pay for it. A couple nights ago,
Yeah.
I get on my Comcast remote control
Yeah.
and said MLB extra innings.
Wow.
Then they say, do you want to subscribe?
Yeah.
And I hit subscribe.
Yeah.
And last week was the early bird special. Keep in mind,
Oh,
this is
really?
only for 60 games. It was like $79.95.
Boy, is that right? Does that give you every
single
game?
game.
Every game.
Now, I was tardy on doing that deal, so I did it a night or two ago.
Yeah.
So it's $89.95.
Another
so
$10
that's
or
$90.
something?
Well, you divide 60 games, I'm paying $1.50 for
What
a
a
game.
steal.
So, that's kind of like my drug. Now, the great thing, and I've been on Comcast for the last 20 years,
Yeah.
dedicate channels to the home team,
Yeah.
because a lot of times
you get
we're playing the Marlins, and they're playing in Miami.
And
I
you
get
get
the Marlins
Marlins
announcers, and a lot of time with standard definition.
Right.
Well, this year,
Didn't they decree that the announcers should just try to be neutral and not come across, because some of these games, the home team announcers aren't involved? Doesn't that sound right? I swear I read that. So they were saying, hey, announcers, if you're doing games, it may be just you to both towns, so don't go crazy being homers. I swear I read that.
okay, that
You
might be. I've
you
never
haven't run
seen
across that?
But this year, Duke,
Huh.
Comcast finally smartened up.
Huh.
Channel 3001. And that might be, what's the first? Is it Anaheim, Atlanta would be the first,
The
alphabetically speaking?
Oh, I guess.
Is it called the, no,
Or aren't they
Los
the-
Angeles. Right, so.
the Los Angeles
right,
Angels
so-
at Anaheim?
Right, so Atlanta might be.
Atlanta Braves might be number
Atlanta
one.
might be 3001.
Really?
Being a national, there's no team below W.
Huh.
30 teams in baseball.
Huh.
We are 3030.
Oh, is that right?
And after
Is that right? There's stations.
So, Duke, I get every game now, after all these years,
Huh.
in high def with my home announcers,
Oh,
regardless
is that
if
right?
they're on the road.
And high def.
After 3030,
Wow.
you got all the NBA teams. And after that, all the NHL teams.
Really?
So I get all my Montreal Canadiens,
Wow.
or will be next season when NHL starts up December 1st again. I mean, this is
So when the Stanley Cups are ending in October,
sometime in October.
but
Yes.
they just feel they need to. Well, that's
little break.
not a huge break.
Yeah. So
And is next season going to be a shorter season? Is that clear?
that I don't know.
Huh.
I
Boy,
don't
you'd
know.
think they'd
I
shorten
don't
it.
know.
Boy, isn't that weird?
let's see, football, we haven't talked about.
I know how much football means to you.
Football.
You're still very confident football happens?
I have a billion reasons why. Football is all about money.
Yeah.
And it's just too much. If guys drop, they drop. That's just, you can't stop the
Because
football
I'm hearing
train.
Dan Patrick got into college football today. He's so skeptical. 100 players and all the staff and stuff.
All right, here's the deal.
Yeah.
I'll take your alma mater, Duke University.
Yeah.
As you mentioned
And
last
ACC
week.
is still planning to do, I think, all
if,
conference.
If I went to Duke,
Yeah.
I would be cutting a check for how much?
As
Just a regular student. I went to
go
Duke
to school?
University. Yes, sir.
Geez, the last figure I heard was $78,000.
$78,000. You multiply that by 4. That's about
Ian, maybe think about another college.
about $310,000 to go. So you're a student, you pay that kind of money. But if you're a football player,
Yeah.
you got a scholarship, and there's a lot to be said about getting a $300,000
And
plus
for the
scholarship.
record, as I hardly have to tell you, as much as you beat up on the basketball guys, obviously, virtually all the football players at Duke get a degree, or certainly most of them. And I suspect most of those guys are reasonably intelligent.
And there's a reason for that, Duke.
But before they turned the
Because it's
program
the-
around and started winning a few
Right.
games, they were always like the top academic
Oh,
football
absolutely.
team in the
Because they're
country.
mediocre, and again, mediocre,
Sure.
they're an average program.
Right.
And you'll maybe get one Duke football player a year that's drafted.
And I think this last year, I don't think there was anybody drafted.
Right. And of course, the Giants quarterback, Daniel
Oh,
Jones, is from Duke.
Aside from Daniel, of course.
So they will stay for 4 years, and getting
Typically.
a scholarship from Duke University is like almost as good as getting one from Harvard.
Yeah, and degrees should be worth something
Yes.
to these guys.
But, you go to Ohio State, USC, big programs like that,
Yeah.
they're not sticking around.
Boy, the Big Ten sounds like this, the big Power Five conferences, the Big Ten sounds like this, and that's funny because you think of football, the big house, the biggest crowds in the world maybe for a sporting event, places like Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Big Ten sounds like it's the shakiest on whether football's going to happen.
Yeah, but, as far as NFL playing, a guy like Pat Mahomes is
Yeah.
getting $35 million a year.
Yeah.
Would I risk COVID-19 for $35 million?
Yeah.
You're darn right I would.
Right. And speaking, actually, well, I think of you probably heard this, Rutgers was in the news big time. Speaking of the Big Ten, 20-plus players at Rutgers,
Yeah.
or maybe players and staff just tested positive
See,
within the
I
last
know,
couple of days.
Right. My Achilles heel is, I'm anti-major college sports
Yeah.
because they're not student athletes.
And Mr. Handy would jump in with you in a
Right.
second.
And all I can tell you-
I can understand that.
Not to beat up on the Duke right now.
Why you
but
love
folks,
UVM?
Duke basketball, a basketball player is no different than the janitor at Duke University. They're an employee,
Right,
and they're gone.
except for the obvious fact that Duke basketball has given so much unbelievable publicity, which has helped the university in scores of ways and stuff. So,
There was
like
a
Coach K, you could probably make the case that Coach K's underpaid, that they can't possibly pay him enough for the generally good publicity that Duke basketball has generated for decades.
He gets.
Aside from some
There was
critics.
a huge story on the internet a couple weeks ago about
Yeah.
he gets $9 million.
Yeah, I think he's like the top band. I
top.
thought it was even a little more, maybe.
Yeah.
Although they do throw him in the Fuqua School of Business. I think he's like maybe professor emeritus there. I think they do get some other use out of him,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah.
And I told you, his offices are right next to Cameron Indoor Stadium. In fact, one of the names he is a fellow freshman Dookie in my freshman dorm, Alan Schwartz, who made it big time on Wall Street before the crash of 2008. But I think I've said, I got to think, in fact, I get concerned every time I'm in D.C., and I always walk by the White House. I stay 10 minutes from it. Just the security there, I'm not impressed. I mean, if you just had a couple of, just huge vehicles and just sent them in.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, my long point here is the security at Coach K's headquarters, I think, is way better than the White House security. Anyway.
Yeah. So I have seen headlines about college players, and my point I'm trying to make is, in the NFL, you're making millions and millions of dollars, where these kids, of course, I'm totally against college kids getting paid because, like I said, you
Yeah,
go to do.
I'm not buying.
You're,
I'm not
you're
buying
getting
into
a
that.
300,000 plus
Yeah, they're
education.
getting a scholarship, which for some kids is worth something.
Right. You go to University of Michigan. I mean, it's probably not 70 some odd a year, but I'm
State
guessing
school.
Michigan's at least $50,000.
Sure. Any of those schools are probably
year.
50.
I mean,
And
heck,
even UVM's
an
no
out-of-stater,
cheap date.
an out-of-stater
Right.
at UVM's probably close to $50,000.
Yeah, that could well be. Yeah, UVM's no cheap date.
Yeah. So football.
So pro football, you're still.
Yeah.
You just think there's too much money
It's
for
just,
them to.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the New York Giants, the opt-out was 4 o'clock today.
Oh, is that right? Oh, is that right? You can't opt out after
4 o'clock today.
Really?
Now, of course, the incentive on the opt-out
Yeah.
is, boy, and I'm trying to remember.
funny you use
There
that
was a
word, huh?
150,000 stipend you get for opting out, or 350, and I can't remember the rules on what you get. But cornerback Sam Beal, that nobody even knows of out there, but of course DeAndre Baker and Quinton Dunbar, another corner from the Seattle Seahawks, were involved in a card game earlier this summer,
Really?
and they lost about $80,000.
Really?
So the boys didn't take it all that well. They went back to the hood, got their piece,
Really?
and stuck up these guys,
Really?
and that's going through the legal process right now. And shame on the Giants. They traded up to get DeAndre Baker out of Georgia.
Yeah.
He was the top cornerback out of college.
Really?
And so they traded up to get him.
Huh.
They didn't do their homework. The guy is not a team guy. Let me put it that way to be polite.
Yeah.
Last year, and again, shame on the Giants, falling asleep numerous times during team meetings.
Falling asleep?
Asleep. Okay. Now, superstars can do that, and they get away with it because they're the team.
That's pathetic. Give me a break.
About game 10 last year, he blew the coverage. And do you know what he said? Well,
What, blamed his fellow teammates?
I'll give him some credit for being honest. He didn't quite know all the playbook.
He said that.
Right.
Huh?
Now, a lot of these players that come to the NFL, they have a education level of about a third grader, and they just keep pushed along because, you know what? You're a great athlete. We want you here at school. Classes, forget about it. And so he
acknowledged that, huh?
Yeah, and we're sitting there. It's like, here we are, November, and you don't know the playbook. But Joe Judge is a no-nonsense type of guy. Now, the previous coach, Pat Schumer, very nice guy. Yeah. But in this day and age, you can't be a very nice guy and be successful. You can't. You've got to put your foot down. And so Baker,
coming out of Belichick's system, you'd think he'd be pretty much a no-nonsense guy.
We signed a very good corner, James Bradbury, who will be the left cornerback from the Carolina Panthers. Not quite an all-pro caliber, but very close. Good player. And they were hoping DeAndre Baker would learn his lesson, be better, play like a first-round pick, and this crap started. So we assumed Sam Beal would be taking that spot if Baker doesn't come back. Well, again, he opted out.
He opted out.
So now Julian Love, our third choice, probably will end up.
Really?
I'm hoping Baker comes back. My feeling with Baker is he comes back as an angel, or you just get rid of the bum completely.
Wow.
So
that deadline's passed then.
But I did check the Patriots' schedule. They have 5 games, then they're on a bye. They've got 3 very winnable games.
Yeah.
They've got Miami. First game of the year.
Miami's been a tough team for them.
But I'm saying winnable. I'm not guaranteeing you. They have a couple weeks later Las Vegas. Okay.
As in Oakland / Vegas.
And then the 5th week, I can't remember, was a winnable game as well. So their schedule's pretty good. I'm thinking New England is at best an 8-8 team.
At best.
At best, I really truly believe that.
I'd like to think.
Between Brady leaving and they have 8 opt-outs.
I got the Boston Globe opting not to play. That's Dante Hightower picture
right,
there.
and it's not, some of them are bumps that they're very replaceable.
they've lost some.
But 4 out of them, Marcus Cannon starting.
Hightower.
Tower's a linebacker. Boy.
Yeah, no, they've lost some good people.
I mean, they've lost some really good people.
Patrick Chung. Pretty solid guy.
A very solid safety guy for the last 10 years.
Brandon Bolden, a useful player.
Great special team player.
So Pats have been the most players opting out.
Yeah.
And of course, some speculation, I wonder if that has anything to do with Tom Brady not being around. Who knows?
My feeling is a lot of these guys are wearing rings already. Your incentive to get a ring, when you jump in your casket at the end of your life, you're not going to get buried 6 feet with it on. But when you lie there and people walk by you, you want to be wearing your Super Bowl ring.
Yeah.
When they shut the lid, you pull the ring off and give it to the wife or the kid.
Yeah. And the McCourty, speaking of the Pats again, Jason, and they sounded pretty
Don't like
shaky,
those guys.
But I'm just saying, I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying they sounded very concerned about the coronavirus situation, but apparently they didn't opt out. I guess.
Exactly, because your good friend OBJ was spouting a week ago about the NFL not doing enough, blah 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 blah. So one person,
sorry, we're not
on the
paying
internet,
you. Sorry, you're getting so underpaid, OBJ.
OBJ, if that's the case, opt out if they're not doing the job. And of course, he loves the attention. He's got a huge contract.
Not to mention the money.
Yeah, so he didn't opt out. I think the sports world has done a remarkable job of handling this unfortunate situation.
It looks like basketball and hockey in particular. My man Adam Silver, another Dookie. Adam's a Dookie.
Okay.
Sounds like basketball especially, and then they bagged it as soon as who was it? Goberts. As soon as the Memphis
Rudy
player.
Gobert.
As soon as he went down, and boy, Adam Silver didn't screw around with that.
No.
Hey guys, that's it.
Yeah.
But I think basketball especially has done a good job, and it sounds like hockey pretty much. I don't have as much of a sense about football, and obviously you got a ton more player footballs, and the contact sounds like a much tougher issue.
Yeah, and of course I'm not even sure, Duke, the date, and it's still maybe a couple weeks away. They have opened camp up,
and of course no preseason games
that they can start hitting. Okay, right. And I know David, Andy, and I are real advocates of the poor play. We stem it to the lack of practicing, the lack of hitting, where the offensive line, I think that's the common denominator. I think offensive lines have disintegrated greatly in the last few years.
Which is maybe, and a guy who I mentioned, who's one of the better offensive players, my man Joe Tooney out of North Carolina State. I was stunned. I thought the Pats would say, hey, thanks, Joe. Great job. I mean, this guy never screws up, and they're paying him $14 million. That's kind of unlike Patriots to me. I was surprised I was happy they did that, but I was a little surprised.
You look at
they, just being of offensive linemen, they know what they've got in him.
Former Patriot, a couple years ago, Basic Economics 101. Nate Soldier out of Colorado, first-round pick of the Pats.
Not
about
good news
8 years.
for you. Good move by the Pats.
We signed into a huge contract, highest-paid lineman in football at that time. $19.5 million a year, and the guy's like Swiss cheese.
And the Pats, as you've said a bunch of times, Belichick is very good about getting rid of a guy too early than too late.
You know my favorite
the Pats
saying?
Weren't going to throw that big money out.
It's better to get rid of a guy 1 year too early than 1 year too late. Belichick, love him or hate him.
Yeah, he's pretty good about that.
He knows.
And even Brady, I don't beat him up again. I don't beat the Pats up as some people will always do, especially if they don't have a good season. And Brady may go crazy in Tampa Bay. But, I mean, in fact, he turned 43, I think, 2 days ago. But, man, I mean, $30 million and again, he hasn't. And again, offensive line hasn't been great for him. And, and I'm a big Patriots guy. Thank you, Tom. I'm not beating up on you. But, again, he he hasn't looked great for the last year or two and stuff, and I don't blame him for not paying him 30, especially if he was insisting on 2 years.
Right.
I don't blame him for not
Right.
paying 60 mil or something.
Duke, he could very well end up MVP this year.
Yeah.
And next year, he could just fall apart. At
Yeah.
age 43, you don't know.
And
And
maybe-
again, that harkens back to what I just said. It's
Yeah.
better to get rid of him a year too early.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this year for the Patriots as a retool year, not a rebuild,
Yeah.
but they have to decide in 2021
Yeah.
who their quarterback is it going to be.
But we'll see. I'm
The
thinking.
kid Stidham?
I would just say they've got potential to have a better year than if Cam Newton's healthy. I mean, Cam's got something to prove here. I mean, Cam has a good year. He could look at one more big contract.
Right, and they did win 12 games last year.
Yeah.
They could, yes, win 10 games this year, as we always talk about,
Yeah.
that unbelievably weak division they play.
Which looks like
Now,
it's showing a little. Hey, Miami beat
Miami
them in
last year, the coach should have got Coach of the Year, Flores.
another
Won
former
5
Patriots
games
assistant.
last year, and I would have bet you any amount of money. Certainly wouldn't have not
And toward
won
the
more
end
than
of the
2.
season, especially
They
when
look
they
good.
beat the Pats in a game that cost the Pats
And
home
Ryan
game.
Fitzpatrick looked pretty good last year.
Yeah.
Now,
And
they
they
did
got
draft Tua.
Yeah.
Now, you're not going to draft.
Got about 1 minute, my man.
You're not going to draft Tua and put him on the bench. Maybe Fitzpatrick plays the first month.
Yeah.
So I'm not expecting much from them. The Jets are horrible.
It looked like they were coming up, but Buffalo looks like they are legitimately
right. This
coming
is
up.
a big year for their quarterback, Josh Allen. It has to show me if he's
And
legit.
their defense. I mean, Buffalo's
Yeah.
got at least a
Yeah.
half decent. So the AL East maybe, AFC East maybe a
Yeah.
little better.
Yeah, so Duke,
Anyway.
that's it. I'm done with you. Get off the set.
I'm glad that was just a dream, Hawk. I'm glad I'm still
Oh,
around.
I'm telling you, when you were screaming, it was your voice. To hear, you know how many seconds when you fall off thousands of feet before you hit Earth?
Probably
and they
a
say,
few.
too, a lot of times before you hit, you die of a heart attack from the fear.
Glad it was just a dream.
Okay, so that's it. That concludes this edition of the Best Damn Sports Show in Franklin County. For Al, our engineer, Mr. Duke Forrest, I'm the Nighthawk. Till next week, remember, you do not have to be a great athlete to be a good sport. See ya.
See ya.